Let's do this. Yes.
Hey everybody, Eric Sweats here for TheGamer, back with another deep dive into this year's Game Awards Game of the Year nominees, joined today by George Foster.
Woo! Game of the Year, hello.
We're talking about Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and George is here to defend its honor. George, 6 top-tier nominees this year, and you're going to bat for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So a couple of things that might be working against this one. One is that it came out really early.
Yes.
And we tend not to see games that released early in the year win. Now, obviously, that's not fair. That's not a metric we should be considering. But it is true that games that come out in January, February, March don't really win Game of the Year.
No.
So it'd be a huge upset in terms of the stats if it did win. The other thing is that this is a very long game. And I'm not sure if it deserves the length, but talk to us about why this is a Game of the Year nominee.
Well, before I get into that, I want to say that for most of 2024, I didn't think it was a Game of the Year nominee at all.
Okay.
I did not click with Rebirth for a really good time.
Okay.
So I loved Remake. I adored it. I'm sure you feel the same, that the Kingdom Hearts vibes were very strong with the characterization, even with the combat. And I'm sure there are people out there who are going to hate that I've just said it's like Kingdom Hearts, but it is. Get over it. It's Kingdom Hearts. So I loved Remake, went into Rebirth, fully expected to love it as well. And for whatever reason, I don't know whether it is an early year game, a February thing, but I just did not like it, like at all. I think I played 15 hours, and those 15 hours were like very separated. There was no night where I went, ooh, I've been sucked into Rebirth for 10 hours, it's just like a few 2 hours here and there. Never clicked. The bloated open world, the story that stopped and started at like every segment it could to do a mini game, and even like the combat mechanics, none of it really clicked with me. So when this got Game of the Year, I was like, did we play the same game? Like, why does everyone love Rebirth so much? And of course, because we talk about the Game Awards, we talk about Game of the Year, that made me go, okay, I'll give it another shot. Like, I loved Remake. I want this to be something I can be like, oh yeah, I agree. And lo and behold, it somehow happened. Like, I get it.
Okay.
It clicked with me. Like, I finally understand why Rebirth is there. Before I say, like, why, how do you feel on Rebirth? We've never really talked about it.
So, like, I played a lot of Final Fantasies growing up, but 7, I think 7 came out in like 98, right? And so I was 8. It was a little mature. So I really got into like 11 and 12 and all the different versions of 13.
God,
yeah. But 7 I didn't get into until Remake. I thought was very good. I thought it was a little long, but I thought it was cool. And
you had no idea.
Yeah. And then Rebirth, I was like, this is just bloat. I just felt like, man, they took one game, they turned it into 3, and they did not really have a good reason to do that. And so they just filled it with stuff I do not want to do. And so I didn't finish Rebirth.
You're in the same boat as me then.
Yeah, I just did. It was just too much stuff I didn't want to do.
Yeah, and I fully agree. Like, this is the thing with me. I think what it came down to is, from the perspective of someone who writes about games, we don't get a chance to sink time into something, right? Like,
right.
Unless you are deeply in love with it, or you're covering it and you want to get 100% out, the chances you have to play a game like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, like top to bottom, are so rare. And I think the pressure of that, combined with really, really wanting to know what happened at the end, because of course they handled that scene, you know which one I'm talking about, everyone knows which one I'm talking about. The fact they had that there at the end waiting, for me, I was like, right, why am I stopping to race chocobos? Why am I doing all these stupid mini games? Like, I just want to know what happens. Like, I care about these characters so much. But then, removed from that, taking the time well, I guess taking 9 months to play every other game and leaving Rebirth its own slot late in the year where there's nothing interrupting it. You know, I really enjoyed sinking into the world. Like, the effort, yeah, Square Enix goes a little far with the minigames, but there's no other game this year that feels as much like an adventure, like a journey, as Rebirth does. The fact it sinks you into this world, and there's so much to it, it feels like a living, breathing place. And I think that's just like one of the things it does really well. Yeah. And it's hard to see that when you first play it. And, you know, next month you've got 9 games coming out and you've only got a limited time to play it. Like, it's like, oh my god, let me cut through this. But if you just take the time, that's when it shines.
That's interesting. Did you feel that way about 15?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Okay.
I was younger when 15 came out. I think I was probably just turning 18. So obviously not writing about games professionally. I took that time there and then. Like, I platinumed it. I put more than 100 hours into it.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting you mentioned 15, actually. I'd never thought of that comparison, but now you say it, yeah, like, they're totally the same thing in my mind.
Yeah.
Like, if you were just playing to get to the end, or you weren't interested in all the side stuff, and you weren't, like, super locked into the characters, you'd be like, oh my god, what's all this other stuff doing here? Why does Noctis care about fishing so much?
Right.
But if you remove that, then it's like, oh no, I love this. I love seeing these characters do everything. Yeah. Like, I didn't want to stop being with Cloud and the gang this second time around.
Okay. That's the best argument I've heard for it, I think, because, like,
that's what I'm all about. Good
I can totally get that. I can totally get just, like, really loving those characters and wanting to spend as much time with them as possible, and also just sort of just really being immersed in the world and not minding if you don't think of it as all of these are obstacles to my goal, which is finishing the story.
Yes.
Versus
exactly.
just like, I'm just playing around in Midgard or whatever.
Exactly. Like, it's for the themes of Rebirth, which is building up the relationship between the characters, because obviously in the next part things are going to go very badly. Towards the end things go very badly. You know, for that to impact you, you have to care about the characters. You have to understand that Cloud has a connection with everyone. It's all about bonds, right? And once you understand that, and you're like, okay, so every time we stop for this character's character arc to conclude, you know, that's a good thing. That's great. I didn't see it like that originally.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, like, I guess for me, if I'm gonna play a game for 80 hours, I want it to be novelistic. I want it to have a lot of, like, depth of theme and twists and turns and intrigue to a degree that I don't think this game can offer, because it's not really all that deep.
I again, we are thinking the same way. I've just evolved beyond how I used to think about it. Yeah. Where did you stop in Rebirth? I think that's important.
Oh, dude, early. Unfortunately, quite early.
So I originally stopped at Costa del Sol. I don't know if you got there.
Yes, I did get there, yeah.
Yeah, so that was where I stopped. I was like, nothing important has happened this whole time besides some very small scenes. As soon as you go to the next place, which is Corel, and you find out about Barrett's backstory, and then you go to the Gold Saucer, like, from those moments on, there is always something happening. There is always something to care about and to chase. The whole arc with Cloud where, you know, he's starting to remember Zack and his memories are failing him and he thinks his soldier cells are degrading. All of that comes into, like, full force. They don't make you stop as much. Like, they put a lot of the focus on the story. So I think where you stop with Rebirth, and I can't believe this is a common through line that people do have to stop for this game, I think that matters. I think if you picked it back up and you continued on, you know, you'd have about a few hours of, like, random playing pirate mini games and football with Red 13. You'd have that and you'd be like, oh, okay, but it gets to a point where they stop doing that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the point is that people do stop playing it, right? That's the issue.
That's why it's a difficult game of the year thing, because I feel like everyone who has completed it has got to that finish line. I hope they've had the same kind of journey as me, where they've realized, you know, I often think, especially in our field, like, we play games and we're always trying to get to the end fast, right? We're always trying to experience as much as we can. with as quick a time
Right.
as we can.
Yeah.
I think Final Fantasy VII Rebirth doesn't allow that. I think if you play it like that, you are losing a lot. But even for me, like you were saying about not wanting to do the side stuff because of the story, I didn't. Like, I still didn't do the side stuff. I did that after. When I cleared it, I went back and I was high level. I wasn't struggling against the summon battles. I'd got the hang of like the synergy attacks and everything the combat mechanics introduced in Rebirth, and it just all clicked like so much better.
Yeah, I also kind of think I'm here to argue against you.
Yeah, go for it.
I also kind of think like the list of snubs this year is pretty short. There are some like I could see arguments made for Helldivers 2.
Yes.
I could see I couldn't, but a lot of people think Stellar Blade should have been nominated. Okay. I mean, I just think there is a little bit of an element of if not Rebirth, then what? And then you sort of think, well, maybe it just ended up on the list because there wasn't a lot of other stuff that should have.
See, I understand that viewpoint because I already have a very big list of snubs. Like, we talked about early games in the year getting snubbed, and Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is right there.
Yeah.
It hurts, I know.
It hurts because, like, you can say, oh, that's not the kind of game that wins Game of the Year, but then Balatros here, so
yeah, exactly.
You have to throw that out.
You know, Shadow of the Erdtree as DLC is there, and I'm sure I'm not an Elden Ring fan. I don't think you are either. No. I'm sure. I'm certain that deserves it because it's FromSoft and people loved it and it's more Elden Ring. But, you know, the list of snubs is pretty big in my case, I think. But I think Rebirth does... There's no game that I played... I guess maybe part of it's an emotional connection where, you know, usually I'm pretty set on how I feel about a game. You know, for as long as I've been playing games, I'm usually like, yeah, I like this, or no, I don't like this.
Yeah.
There's usually not much middle ground, and there's usually not like a transformative second act where I go, actually, I love this game.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what Rebirth did for me.
Yeah.
I am confident that if people who did drop it, like you, if you went back to it with a clear slate, with a clear schedule, you weren't like, oh my god, I have to finish this before this deadline. Yeah. Which I technically did because I wanted to talk about it for the Game Awards, but I also wasn't in like a proper rush. I think you would see what it does well, and I think you would get properly into it.
Compelling, convincing, interesting. Okay, well, you can't argue that one game should win without also arguing why 5 other games should lose. So I'm going to put you in the hot seat here. Why should Rebirth be Game of the Year, but Astrobot shouldn't?
That is a tough one, because Astrobot would be my choice besides Rebirth.
Yeah?
You know, I hate to even be somewhat negative about Astrobot, because its simplistic focus on platforming is exactly what I like. Like, I love platformers. I love the fact that PlayStation have decided to go back that era and just put a focus on something, you know, just simple fun. But, you know, I was thinking about this the other day. I think Astrobot, one, it's the easy victory, right? That's why you've asked me. It's the front runner. So I'd love an underdog to win, even if the underdog is the biggest RPG series in the world.
Yeah.
And 2, as much as I love Astrobot, and it's very creative, you know, platforming segments, I also think it's somewhat basic in a lot of areas. I think the key thing that made me realize this actually is Anton Blast, which recently released. Now, that game, oh my god, okay, if Anton Blast is on the list, I'll be talking about Anton Blast, but that game has such a good core moveset. Like, Anton feels amazing to control. You've got so many tricks to do. You've got so many things you have to learn and master, which I think is what makes a platformer. Astrobot doesn't have that. Like, I love Astro, but you run, you jump, you smack things, you spin in the air, you react to environmental prompts and abilities. That's kind of where the depth of Astrobot ends.
I mean, and then every level has its own
I know. Which is cool. I do love that. But when it comes to the core mechanics, Astrobot is probably as basic as they come. And that's talking from, like, I know that's highbrow platforming snob talking there, and I'll take that crown, fine. But if I had to say why Astrobot shouldn't, I think for a platformer that is Game of the Year nominated, of course it does lots of cool, interesting stuff, but when it comes to the, like, minute-to-minute movement when you don't have a gimmick, it's yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
Serviceable.
Okay, and then Shadow of the Erdtree and Wukong. I know that these are not your kind of game, but they are the two most hype games of the year, right? Somehow. You want to make a case against them here?
God, why not? Okay, so Shadow of the Erdtree, I feel like this is an easy one for why it shouldn't, because it had its year. Last year it had its year. It wasn't nominated for Game of the Year and lost, and this is its redemption arc. Sure. It was nominated and it won, and it's one of the biggest games of all time. Like, of course it deserves its moment in the spotlight, but it's already had that. It doesn't need an encore. Like, it should be celebrated. It deserves all of the medals. Like, I'm so happy that FromSoft fans have something as good as Erdtree, but it doesn't. I don't think it needs another Game of the Year win.
Yeah,
I would be surprised if it won. I think that would cause a lot of anger. And Black Myth, which I played, I'm another thing I'm really glad lots of people have connected with, but I was not one of them. It was fine.
It was fine.
Decent.
Yeah. Okay. You have anything to say about Metaphor?
No, I haven't played Metaphor yet. That is my biggest blind spot this year, because we've talked about how Rebirth is too long. Metaphor is even longer, and I haven't even started that. So it's like, at this point, I just have to concede that, if Metaphor wins, I was wrong. Cool, but
I'm guessing that this is the least played Game of the Year nominee.
It has to be. Who has the time,
The guy who's voting for Rebirth had the time.
well, half the length, thank you, if you're quick about it.
And then Balatro.
Oh, we love Balatro. Everyone loves Balatro.
We do love Balatro.
That was another turnaround moment of, I don't know poker, I won't like it, and oh crap, I really like Balatro, there goes my life. I would be happy, I'm shooting for Rebirth, I would love that. I think the effort that Square Enix has put into doing this lifelong dream that people have had of remaking Final Fantasy VII, yeah, you could argue it could be one game or two game, not three games, but this has been wanted for so long. This has been one of the most requested games ever. For them to take that and go, okay, we'll do everything, we'll make it more stuff than you even want, I respect that. So
the human effort of Rebirth.
Human effort, it's a technical marvel. The other day I was watching a clip of Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion, the remaster from last year, and I was like, wow, this looks good compared to the PSP version. And then an advert played of Zack Fair in Rebirth. I was like, oh my god, like wizards over at Square Enix. I know,
it is interesting. It's almost like comparing like the Great Pyramids to like a really beautiful cottage a guy built out in the woods. Like, yeah, you can appreciate both of them, but I mean,
I think on a technical scale, Rebirth is like the front runner there, right? Like,
probably, yeah.
I know it had its issues with frame rate and stuff, but even just the size of the world, like, I'm not.
That's an interesting question.
I'm not the sort of person who like really cares about that, because I like interesting mechanics more. But like Rebirth has that too. Like, its combat, I'm sure even you would say, having played Remake, it's just top tier, incredible, real time stuff. Like, interesting year. No clear front runner.
But
we hope it's Rebirth, right? Even though I know
you're batting for Rebirth, but what do you think will win?
See, like you said, tough one. In a dream world, Balatro is the big underdog and the big upset. That would be super cool to see. I still think it'll be Astro though, and as much as I've had to say why Astro shouldn't, like, I'll be happy if Astro wins.
Yeah,
awesome, more platformers. I'm pleased, but Rebirth would be really cool for me as someone who got turned around on it and eventually formed a really strong bond with it and still thinks about it now. I'm hopeful.
We've been doing these episodes all week, and most people, no matter what game they pick, they all seem to agree that Astro will win. So it will be interesting. It'll be interesting. Okay, gamer. Thanks for the chat, and thank you for watching. If you stuck around this long, let us know down in the comments if you think Final Fantasy VII Rebirth deserves to win Game of the Year. We'll be back tomorrow with another game. That's it for this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell, and visit us at thegamer.com. That's The Gamer. No spaces.